Hello chess family, it's me National Master Jesse James, and today we're on rule number 27. Bishops are better than knights in all positions but closed positions. Here we're going to go ahead and see where Morphy gets a bishop versus knight and go ahead and treat it correctly. What I mean by that? Well, whenever you're dealing with the knight versus bishop, we want to make the pawn structure that is best for it. Whenever you make more pawn trades, it's going to be better for the bishop so it can move around. Vice versa, when you have the knights, you want to keep as many pawns on the board so you can try to play against the bishop. Now, the knights can jump in between the pawns. The bishop has a harder time at that. Let's see how Morphy is able to go ahead and go into a very nice endgame here with the bishop versus knight. All right, here we go. We start off with e4, e5. Morphy's going to be playing with the black pieces against James Thompson. Knight f3, knight c6. Bishop c4, the Italian. Bishop c5, pawn c3, the Gioco piano. Looks like he's getting ready to play. This pawn to d4 over here. Knight f6, developing and attacking the pawn. And here a lame move, pawn to t3. Yes, this is a very nice standard move here, but definitely not the best if you're trying to play for an advantage in the opening. Granted, you don't have to do that, but whenever you're white, why shouldn't you? So this d3 move here is not the move that I would be looking to play. I definitely would be looking at playing the d4 moves, which are going to be very crazy and definitely fight for an advantage here for white. All right, with that being said, the lame move d3 got played. Pawn to d6 gets played. Pawn to h3, a very nice move here. For a lot of you Italian players or Gioco pianos, it's always a good idea to stop your opponent with this pin of bishop g4 and vice versa, bishop to g5, especially when the bishop's outside the pawn chain, as the bishop can't go back. Now this pin can be very, very annoying. So, simple chess, you just play h3 or h6 to stop it. Alright, it was Morphy's turn. He goes ahead and plays bishop e6, developing with the threat. Bishop to b3, a very nice move here. For those of you Gioco piano players and Italian players, as I said, this is a very standard move. If bishop takes, pawn takes, well, black actually does enjoy this as well. The pawn can go to d5, and here's the dream. We'll go ahead and make a quick move here for white. If black does play d5, he's hoping for something like pawn takes and pawn takes. Mind you, we probably wouldn't do that right now as well. The e-pawn is a little bit weak here whenever you start attacking it. But this is the idea of this playing bishop e6. So white plays one of the best ways against this and goes ahead and plays bishop to b3. So now if we take on b3, we can take with the queen, or my move I like even better, pawn takes on b3, and now we have a very nice center here. And we've opened up the rook, which was inactive but now is an active piece. Alright, of course these are all standard moves, and neither opponent's fallen for some of the basic strategies in these pawn structures. Morphy goes ahead and plays pawn d5. Looks like he loves to play the Scotch as black and plays d5. Now this is a good move, but be careful as the e-pawn can get weak. With that being said, Morphy is able to navigate these harsh waters. Alright, d5 got played, e takes d5, bishop takes d5. The typical move here is knight takes d5, which I do like, but I can definitely understand him wanting to take with the bishop here. Bishop takes, castles over here, castles over here. Let's develop with the threat, white to move. What's the best move here? Alright, bishop to g5. Bishop takes on b3, and now it's forced to play pawn takes on b3. Already in this position, there are some things you should be noticing for white and for black. Here, white and black both have their weaknesses. Where are they? Hopefully you're able to spot them. Here, the weakness for black is actually his e5 pawn. How is this a weakness? Well, this pawn can definitely be attacked because it's on an open file. Vice versa, white has their weakness too, the d3 pawn. This is called a backwards pawn. Why? The pawn cannot be moved forward without being captured. Which one's weaker? Well, with experience, backwards pawns are usually a little bit weaker over here. You could also say the e5 is backwards, but you can see how e5 actually has more space in the center, while white does not have the full central control. Some basic ideas is you can be moving your queen up, your rook over, and then putting maximum pressure. Vice versa, the same thing for white. Playing the rook over, queen over, and just adding pressure on the e5 pawn. Alright, it was Morphy's turn. Pawn to h6 gets played, attacking the bishop. Bishop h4, a nice move here. Of course, we don't want to relieve the tension and take on f6 as well. Morphy would just be happy with queen takes f6. Full development, and now we don't have to worry about that annoying pin. Alright, and now a nice move here that, well, I'm not sure if I would have considered, but it is the best move in the position. Black to move. What do you play here as black? Alright, hopefully you see the idea. Here Morphy is always looking for those forced moves, and here it doesn't matter if it weakens his king side. He goes ahead and plays it. Pawn to g5. All right. Well, there is two ways to play here. White went ahead and played bishop g3, which is what the computer likes the most. If you do feel like getting crazy here and playing knight takes g5, h takes g5, bishop takes g5, this is a very interesting position, but here it does not work as well because, well, the bishop just goes back to e7, maybe knight e8, g7. I'll be able to trade this off, and, well, this pin would be nice, but you don't have enough pieces developed here to actually start a kingside attack. Remember, it's only a threat if you can actually, it's only a weakness if you can actually take advantage of it. In this case, you don't have enough pieces over here on the king side to go for this sacrifice. Alright, so the common sense move was played, bishop to g3, and the reason why Morphy plays this is, again, forced moves. He's looking to make these threats. What do you play here as black? You have to continue with the idea. Here, Morphy sees the forced move here, pawn to e4. Beautiful move here. Morphy has finished up his opening, and now he's going to the middle game. Mind you, white is not yet in the middle game yet, just because he hasn't developed the last minor piece over here. e4, a nice forced move here. Knight to e5, another forced move here. Here, I mean, well, taking here would not be good for you. After pawn takes on e4, now black has a huge advantage here. Morphy is not worried about the endgame. Knight takes on e4 would have gotten played. And now you see one of the big threats is knight takes g3. Due to the pin right here, the pawn can't even take back. And, well, if you trade, the only thing you're doing is helping your opponent develop the pieces. Here, this is an easily winning endgame here for black because black just has so much development and is ready to attack. Oof. All right, back to the game. So that's why white goes ahead and plays this other variation of knight to e5. Trying to keep equality as much as possible. Knight takes, bishop takes, and of course, pawn takes on d3. Here, Morphy has already won a pawn against his opponent. Notice here, you don't go queen takes d3 because, well, you just dropped a piece here. Bishop takes on f6, and yeah, you just took away your only defender for the knight. All right, back to the game. Pawn takes on d3. Bishop takes on f6. It was the only way to win back the d3 pawn. Queen takes on f6, and now white to move. Queen takes on d3, of course. Well, this is a huge advantage for black. What are the weaknesses in this position? Remember, always be thinking about your opponent's weaknesses. What is Morphy's biggest weakness that he's going to be attacking here? Hopefully you found it. It's actually this f2 pawn. It looks like it should be safe because, well, you have a rook and king over here, but that's, you can already see the bishop and queen are ready to attack it. Also, the big weakness that white has is development. Here it's black to move. He's going to be developing with a threat. So these rooks are going to come into the game and make threats and get some free temples off this queen. Again, because this one knight is not out or developed, this is very hard for white to keep playing. Now, whenever you're assessing which rook to move over, think about which rook belongs where. Where do the rooks naturally belong? Well, I know a rook will probably be on d8, and I know a rook will probably go to e8. Why? These are the open files. But you have to make sure you do it in the right move order. For instance, if you say, oh yeah, e8's a great square, and you play your a rook to e8, now you realize this is not too good because your rook can't jump over the other rook. So whenever you're analyzing which rook to move, think about their best placement and then logic it out. Which way should you develop them first? With that being said, we're going to go ahead and develop and attack the queen. Hopefully use the right rook now. Yep, rook a to d8. Attacking the queen. Queen goes to c2. And now, well, let's keep up our development. Rook f to e8. And again, white is having a hard time here. It's not so easy to develop your pieces. In the game, white played pawn to b4. Bishop back to b6. Again, the bishop wants to maintain the attack on f2. And white plays knight to e3. Not a square you really want to put the knight to. A knight on the rim is grim. But, of course, if you tried to play something like knight to d2, the game is over. What would you play here to get an easy win in this position? Of course, you would just go ahead and play rook to e2, and now f2 is attack again, and you've also put maximum pressure. Remember, anytime you have a pinned piece, add pressure, and here this knight is underneath supreme pressure. Alright, back to the game. Knight e3 got played, and now a very nice move here. Queen to f4. What does this move do? It looks like a random move, but if you're a good chess player, you know that's not true. Well, one of the best ways to find your good moves is always to use prophylactic thinking. Look what your opponent wants to do, and you either stop it, or you can let it happen because it's not a good idea. Here, white wants to go ahead and play knight c4, and trade off this knight for this good bishop. So we know that the knight wants to go to c4, so queen f4 goes ahead and stops that. Is that the only thing the queen move did? No, it was not. The queen move also gets ready to penetrate with rook to d2 here, again attacking the pawn and again attacking the queen. Oof. This is a very hard position for white here. It looks like it should be simple, but this is just not the case. All right, white needs to stop this rook to d2 move. Simple chess, develop with a threat. Rook a to d1, and now a nice move here, pawn c6. What does this move do? Well, you can definitely see that this diagonal is a little bit weak over here, so possibly the idea is to play something like bishop c7 to bring the queen, to create a battery here to go for the queen to h2 check and mate. Now, as you guys know, well, your opponent can see this, but if you want to get to the next level, it's not only about making threats and then you're hoping your opponent misses it. It's about creating, making threats and making them make weak moves. What I mean by weak moves, they're making moves that make weaknesses around them. Notice when you play g3, now h3 becomes weak and also f3 becomes weak. So by making very easy threats, you're making them make moves that will make their own position weak. All right, let's keep it going. Here, white went ahead and played rook to d3. Uh-oh, tactics time, black to move. Can you find here a way to win a pawn? It looks a little suspicious, but Morphy knows what he's doing. Do you? Remember, I do encourage you guys to push pause. Hopefully you found it. Here we have the amazing bishop takes on f2 check. Here the queen is overloaded, trying to defend both on f2, but also the rook here on d3. Uh-oh. You can't take back unless you want to lose. Here the king went ahead and ran to h1. Of course, let's take a look and see if we do try to take this bishop. If rook takes on f2, uh-oh, you just got checkmated. Rook to e1 check. Well, the king can't run up because of the queen, so your rook has to go back. And of course, rook takes f1 is checkmate. Okay. What about queen takes on f2? Simple chess. The queen is no longer defending the rook, so we can simply just trade queens real quick and then take the rook. And here we're up the exchange, and it should be a very easy endgame to win. All right, back to the game. After bishop takes on f2, king to h1 gets played. Rook takes d3, queen takes d3, and now a nice move keeping up pressure. Rook to e3. Now this is a very tricky move because there are some checkmate threats being threatened. Because of this, white had to play queen d8 check, king g7, queen d4 check, going into a very bad endgame. Let's see here. For those of you guys who are paying attention, after rook e3, what's wrong with, I don't know, queen to let's just say queen c2. Looks like a decent move because we're going ahead and making an attack, you know, pinning the, attacking the pin piece. Uh-oh, you just got checkmated in 4. Can you find it? Black to move and checkmate in 4. Remember, if it ain't check, it ain't right. Here we go. You start off with rook takes on h3 check. Pawn is take back as well. There's nowhere for the king to move to. Pawn takes. Hopefully find the moves here. Queen f3 check. King h2. Queen g3 check. King h1. And queen takes h3 checkmate. Now this is a very basic checkmate pattern for those who play lots of chess, like me. So this was not too hard to spot. But if you need more practice, go ahead and practice on Lead Chess or chess.com. Two of the best places to practice your chess, your tactics. All right, back to the game. That's why white had to go ahead and trade off queens here and go into this bad endgame. Remember, bishops are better than knights in all but blocked or closed positions. Closed meaning there's many pawns on the board. Open means there's been pawn trades. Here, the bishop will be perfect because there's pawns on both sides of the board. Rather, if there is pawns all together in one place, the knight would actually be the piece that we would like. All right, so queen d8 check got played, king g7, queen d4 check, queen takes, pawn takes. Just remember, if you want to be a good attacker, you have to be a very good endgame player. How does that make sense? Well, a lot of times, whenever you're attacking, you won't actually be able to checkmate. Your opponent knows what you're doing. They're going to stop it. But while they're trying to defend from this checkmate, they're going to be giving you opportunities to go into very good endgames, as we see here. That's why Morphy, as a great chess player, not only was a great attacker, but also a good endgame player. Here, this is an easily lost position here. You can see, although it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or only one pawn up, this could be hard for lots of people to convert to a win. Morphy has no problems with this, though. He knows that these pawns are weak, especially because they're on the same color as the bishop. So he's going to make some good trades here, and of course see all his opponent's threats and stop them. All right, black to move. The first thing we're going to go ahead and stop is them from taking our bishop, of course. Let's go ahead and go ahead and look to win a pawn here. Rook e2 gets played, attacking both the b2 pawn. f2 is now attacking on d4, and of course we're defending our bishop. All right, knight c4 got played, and now very good endgame technique here. You could go ahead and play bishop takes d4 here, which is winning. But remember, what are the easiest endgames to win? King upon endgames. Well, let's go ahead and make some more trades here. In this endgame, the bishop is definitely better than the knight. So, rook e1 gets played. Let's go ahead and simplify the game. Rook is forced to take, bishop takes, and again, because these pawns are all in the same color as the bishop, this is a big weakness. Endgame is going to be very easy here. All right, here we go. Knight a5, white has to try and create counterplay here because these pawns are going to be lost either way. Bishop takes on b4, knight takes on b7, and now a nice move here, king f6. Remember, the king is one of the most important pieces in the endgame. And here, the king is going to be heading toward this queen side over here. This is the best chance to win. Mind you, you could also go for king side over here as you have 1, 2, 3 pawns versus 1, 2, meaning you can create a passed pawn. But at the higher levels, it's the best idea to go ahead and do the two weaknesses principle. Yes, we're weak over. Yes, white is weak over here, but they'll defend over here very well. So let's go ahead and go for the second weakness and go after these pawns. Now, if white comes over here to defend, that means we can start pushing over here. And now this is the two weakness principle. White came over here to defend, and now they can't defend over here on the king side. And the bishop here is definitely worse. You can see it's already being dominated by the bishop, which is a very common technique when you play bishop versus knight. And you can see again, whenever you're trying to get this knight around the board, it's going to be very difficult. To get across the board, the knight can take up 3 to 5 moves. How long would it take with the bishop? 1 move. Definitely a big difference there. Here comes this knight. Knight to d8, attacking the pawn on c6. No pawn left behind, as I like to say. Pawn c5 got played. Knight c6, again looking to make some trades here and attacking this bishop and pawn over here. Nice move here by Morphy. He calculates everything out. King to e6, just bringing the king over. If the knight does decide to take on a7 over here, which it did not, then we would simply just take c takes d4, and again, we have our passed pawn running here. Also be careful, again, the knight can get trapped because the bishop can dominate the dark squares where it can try to move out at. Alright, in the game, white went ahead and played d takes c5, bishop takes c5. And well, yeah, this is just going to be bad. You can already see here that the king has very easy access to come over here to attack the pawn. This king has not been activated. In fact, this bishop's keeping it out of it. So yeah, the king's just going to come over here and pretty much either win the pawn or at least bring this king over here that you're going to be able to push your pawns over here and create your second weakness. g4 got played. Not a bad idea. Because black is controlling the dark squares so well, it makes sense that white should try to control the light squares. Alright, let's keep pushing forward. King d5, of course. Knight to e7, attacking the pawn. Should we just go ahead and play king c4, or maybe defend the pawn with something like f6? Hopefully you chose the right move here. Remember guys, in endgames, there really is not too big of a rush, especially if you're in a better position. When you're in a better position, keep pushing forward and don't allow them to create counterplay. Allowing counterplay means that they can go ahead and attack you. Why let your opponent attack you at all? Here, pawn f6, nice and simple. You can let that pawn fall, but once one pawn falls, another pawn falls, it starts getting complicated. King g2 gets played. Pawn to a5, nice move here. King over to f3. Pawn to a4. The pawn is at its maximum right now, but now we're going to either need to use the bishop or the king to win this pawn. I do like the way that Morpheus played this. King e2, and now we play bishop to d4. The pawn will fall as it can't be moved forward. For those beginners out there, what's wrong with pawn to b4? To be honest, you could probably win both ways, but I just wanted to point out to you, en passant can happen here. But believe it or not, a3 is actually the best move, as it's further away from the king, and we actually control the queening square. Alright, back to the game. At this point, white goes ahead and plays king to d3. Bishop takes on b2. Knight to b7, trying to run back over here and stop this pawn from being queened. At this point, again, the game is already over. This is all just technique. Bishop back to e5, getting away from it. This king, if it wants to try and run over here, will stop defending these pawns, and Morpheus' king will run in and take these guys. Again, the two weaknesses principle. This pawn is one weakness. These guys over here are going to be the second weakness that will be created here. Alright, king c2 got played. King c4, running after him. Morphy has already analyzed that he can actually try and get this pawn across the board. Knight d8. This poor knight is not doing anything good. a3, knight to b7, a2, and here we control the queening square, so there's just no good move here for white. Knight a5 check, king b4, knight b3. It looks like everything's going good here, but now a very nice masterful move. King to a3. And here, Zugzwang has happened. What is Zugzwang? That's whenever any move you make will actually hurt your position. You can't push your pawns forward over here, or else we just simply take. If you move your knight anywhere, we will queen. And if you move your king anywhere, well, we get to take the knight, which again allows you to queen. Now, some of you guys over here might have just played pawn to a1, bishop takes. Yes, this is still winning, but instead of winning the game in about 5 moves, you're going to be playing for another 20 moves. And yeah, you can make the argument, I'm still winning, but remember, the longer the game goes on, the more chances your opponent has to win. So the best technique is always going to be to go ahead and play the best moves, right? Especially if you consider you're playing online games and it's timed, you don't want to be getting any draws just because you ran out of time in a winning position. Well, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this. Remember, bishops are better than knights in all but blocked or closed positions. If you have the knight, try to keep the pawns on the board. If you have the bishops, try to make a few pawn trades so that your bishops are opened up and have good diagonals. Hope you guys enjoyed this game. We'll see you in the next one.